more time. I want you to soak it in before we move on. I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me and what I will answer when I am corrected. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Behold, the proud, his soul is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. So these are the principles that we're talking about. And right in the middle of that, right in the heart of that, is the importance of the plan. And in contrast with that, we go to James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. Right there, Habakkuk chapter 2 just gave us the roadmap for success. Do these things, it's going to happen. Do these things, you're going to see it come to pass. We get to James chapter 4, and we see another example. James chapter 4, verse 13 through 17, another familiar passage, but worth repeating. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? It's even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. What is this dealing with? It is dealing with procrastination. It's dealing with wasting the day and saying, tomorrow I'm going to do that. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. It's really what we see in this passage is procrastination is the enemy of your faith. Faith is what you do now. Faith is what you do today. And the vision and the plan that you're working is something that you're doing right now. You're taking steps to do right now. And it says, and what a lot of people do, they'll talk about this is what I'm going to do someday. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then they never do it. Why? Because they're a procrastinator. And they don't really believe what they're saying, because if they did, they would actually do it. But so much of what we can accomplish for God is so practical if we just do stuff. And the thing is your faith grows with obedience. As you obey, as you apply your faith, it's going to grow. And then the vision that you have before you becomes easier to obtain. It's like, wait, this isn't so daunting. I can see it. I can see it ahead of me. If I keep going this direction, I'm going to get there. But if you never take those steps, you say, tomorrow I'm going to do it, then you don't get there. This is how you're going to be successful in your Christian life. This is how you're going to be successful in regiment, is learn not to be a procrastinator, but by making a plan, you're applying your faith productively, because your lack of plan will be the plan. And two verses more to consider. Proverbs 4:25 through 26 says this. Proverbs 4:25 through 26. Let your eyes look straight ahead and your eyelids look right before you. Ponder the path of your feet and let all your ways be established. In other words, look where you're going. Look ahead. Where are you headed? There's an expression, and it describes a lot of our culture, is that we walk around staring at our feet. In other words, if you just stare at your feet, you can't see the path ahead. You're going to crash. You're going to run into something. And so if you're just thinking about this is what I want now, and you're not looking at where you're going, then you're just going to stumble around and crash into things, and you're never going to get there. So it's important that you look down the road. You keep your eyes open. Keep the vision in front of you. Work the plan. Because if you just shove it off in a corner, put it off until tomorrow, I'll look at it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, you're never going to get anywhere. And that's then it comes to another famous quote from a guy named Zig Ziglar. He said, if you aim at nothing, you will hit the mark every time. So if you don't like where you're at, if you know that you need to be in a better place, then you better have an aim. You better have a goal, or you're not going to get there. And if you just are hoping, boy, I wish things would work out for me, then you need to make a plan, and that's how things will work out better for you. So we're talking about the principle of plan. All that's been the introduction. So I want to give you, on this subject of planning, I'm going to give you 4 basic principles in conjunction with the importance of the plan that you set up. And I'm also going to quote Jocko Willink, who is the SEAL team commander who wrote the book called Extreme Ownership that's helped inspire a lot of these principles that we're trying to incorporate in our Christian walk applied to this group and what we're trying to do as a church and as a people. Jocko says this, and this is where my first point comes from. While a simple statement, the commander's intent is actually the most important part of the brief. When understood by everyone involved in the execution of the plan, it guides each decision and action on the ground. So here's point number one of your plan. The most important part of any plan is the vision of that plan. And that vision is part of this group. And in life, usually, it doesn't come from you. It comes from your commander. And thus, where he says the commander's intent is the most important part of the brief. So that's talking the vision that's supposed to come from your leadership, the vision that's come from your spiritual leadership, from the people over you in the Lord, from the people that are over you in your life. It's very important that you hear that vision and that you run with that vision and not another one, because that you can make plans all day, but if you don't have the heart of the people that you're supposed to be following, it's not going to work out well for you. It says in Proverbs 26:6, he who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. In other words, if you are delegating responsibility to someone that does not have your heart, does not have the ability, someone that should not be trusted with that role, you're just going to cut off your own feet. So make sure that from a leader standpoint, that you have a responsibility that people understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing and they're on the same page. Beyond just saying, do it because I said so. Make sure that they understand it so that they can believe in what they're doing and know their part. But also, from the person's standpoint, that means you don't want to be the fool carrying a message. So sometimes in the busyness of things, and there's a lot of juggling going on, a lot of different things that the people that you look to, that you're looking for information from them, and you want them to communicate that with you, when all along the way, guess what you could be doing? You could be asking a question. You could ask questions. In fact, some of the wisest, most successful people that you'll ever meet ask lots of questions. Don't make the mistake of not understanding what it is that you're supposed to be doing because you never asked. Ask the right questions. It will make you a better person. Like, well, I don't want to sound like I'm stupid or appear like I don't know what I'm talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. So ask the question. And the person who never knows what they're talking about is the one who never asks the question. So don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. It's very important. So again, the most important part of any planning that you guys do in regiment, you'll be doing a lot of plans, is why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? For example, if you have an outreach, what's the goal? You want to get people saved. So you can put a lot of energy into making a plan for an outreach, but then you lose sight on the commander's intent of, we're not doing this to kill time, we're doing this to get people saved. Then you'll spend a lot of energy doing something silly, or maybe something that interests you, but it's not what the purpose is. And you have to come back, well, hold up. What are we supposed to be doing? How does this plan keep that in mind? So it's the same thing like your parents give you chores to do, give you jobs to do, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And you don't reevaluate and say, okay, so why do they want me to do this? What do they want me to do this for? You can start to go through the mechanics of something and it falls apart, doesn't work well for you because you didn't have the vision for it. You didn't have the commander's intent. So don't make that mistake. I'll give you an example of how the vision is so important. Not too many years back, but some years back, we had an employee at the church that ultimately had to be fired. But this employee was given a responsibility with helping with the construction aspect of remodeling the Connect room in the Connect building. And they were supposed to, they were given information. They were told what they needed to do. They're told that it's going to be a multi-purpose room. We have to be portable in how we're thinking, and this is how we're doing it. And we need to make sure that anything that we're designing is something that can set up, break down easily, because lots of people have to use this space. We want to do it in excellence, but we want to do something that's not just built for us. We want to actually do the principle of cover and move, and that's other ministries use this space. So how can everybody benefit from this space? And so the vision was communicated. Get this room ready so we have a nice space for youth, but do it in a way that's a blessing to all the other departments. And along the way, this individual said, "Well, we could take this and make a nice repurpose this wood here and build a nice platform." And they said, "No, you know what? Time's passing. That's an interesting idea, but number one, it's not portable. That's a giant monstrosity of a stage that of wood that you want to rebuild a stage with. It's not practical. It's not portable. It's going to spend a lot of time that we don't have. Leave that project alone and just focus on what you've been told with remodeling this room." Well, this individual heard the vision, but had his own vision, and consequently, he was having volunteers coming in, and they were all out of direct disobedience, actually, from what he was told. Spent all the effort getting all the volunteers to build this platform because that's what he wanted to do. Instead of making the mistake, now, did he have the same goal in mind? Yes, sort of. He did have a goal in mind. He wanted to finish, but he's like, this is what I want to do, and this is the way I want to do it. But it wasn't the same vision. It was division. That's what you have when you have another vision that's competing. And so instead of following orders, instead of following orders of preparing the room, he worked on that platform. Well, consequently, it wasn't what we wanted. Time went away. And then the individual was stressed out because there was so much work to do, so much on his plate, when in reality, he put all of his energy into doing something he was told not to do. And so what we ended up having to do is we ended up having to fire the individual for other issues, but not completely unconnected. But we ended up having to fire the individual, and that platform that he spent so much energy building, because it's what he wanted to do, so he wanted to build a nice big platform, was a total waste because it was ugly as sin. It was hideous. It was trying to save money to build a platform, but it wasn't what it was instructed to do. It was hideous. It was impractical. Tried to spend all this money on wheels for this big ugly thing when it would have been more efficient to just buy something brand new. And we had to basically had all this giant pieces of wood that we ended up having to throw in the garbage. And this individual spent hours wasted building this thing that we were never going to use uh, because he did not have the commander's intent in his plan. He had a plan, he made a plan, but it didn't include the most important component. And so consequently ended up in the garbage. And consequently, he in his life ended up somewhat in the garbage heap as well. So, commander's intent. Point number one about your plan. The most important part of any plan is the vision of that plan, which does not come from you. And you know what? It may never come from you. There's never any point in life where there's not somebody that you're accountable to or over you in the Lord. Even as an older man or older woman, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. It's good to have people that are qualified of reputation that speak into your life, because no one ever, if your name's not Jesus, you don't fully arrive and therefore have all the answers self-contained in yourself. That's like against what Christianity even is. But anyway, so the vision of that plan, the commander's intent, is the most important element that needs to be in any of your planning. Don't forget what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and make sure that your mission is the same mission as those over you, or it's going to be an aborted mission. Okay, next point. Here's another quote from Jocko. Giving the frontline troops ownership of even a small piece of the plan gives them buy-in, helps them understand the reason behind the plan, and better enables them to believe in the mission, which translates to far more effective implementation and execution on the ground. So what's he talking about? He said, so when that vision has been communicated effectively, then no matter what job someone's doing, they hear the vision, they understand the vision, they know the vision, they know their role in the vision. And like, okay, this is what the goal is. And they have a piece of it. In other words, I have responsibilities to bring this to pass. I have a job to help. This is the overall mission, but this is what I'm supposed to do in that. And by having that responsibility, by having that ownership, they have what Jocko refers to as buy-in. In other words, they have a vested interest in the plan's success because they have a part in it. They don't want to do their little part only to see the whole thing unravel around them. So here's the point that I'm making under this. Point number 2 about your plan: make others a part of your team and give them a job. Make others a part of your team and give them a job. 1 Corinthians 12:14 says, "For in fact, the body is not one member, but many." And that almost sounds sarcastic out of context, but that's really, that verse states it very clearly, succinctly. What we need to understand, that the body of Christ is not one member, it's many. So anything that you do that's effective for God is going to be a cooperative effort. Anything you are doing independently, yourself, on your own, for your own glory, for your own goals, it's going to fail because God didn't make us that way. He made us members of a body, which means that everything that we do is tied to other people and everything they do is tied to us. So as the body of Christ, we have to cooperate with one another, which means part of making what's going to make that cooperation work so well, and that's the first part, was commander's intent, that everybody understands the vision, from the front line to the generals. Everybody understands the vision, but also practically that the guy with the smallest role understands the vision and has a role. He has a part in it. It's not just about, oh wow, we just have. I sometimes honestly grow weary of hearing this, but people talk, oh, our pastors, our pastors at Cornerstone, they're just so great. Oh, the pastors. I don't want to be great as much as I want my church to be great. I don't want people to talk about how great I am when they have the potential to do something great themselves. And I don't want people cheering in the stand saying, go, Pastor Chase, you can do it. We need you. We believe in you. I want people to get their butts out of the stands and get on the field and do something, because we're in this together. And so it's important to make others a part of your team and give them a job. In other words, be considerate in your plan that the plan is not just the you show. Okay. It's not about just what you can do, what you bring to the table, what you like, what you want. Find ways creatively to involve other people, from simple roles to big roles, because if other people are involved, other people will care about its success. If you don't involve them, they're not going to care. This has kind of been one of the greater lessons of youth ministry, having been in youth ministry for 27 years, is you guys don't leave your faith after high school if you've been applying your faith as a young person. But the ones that do leave their faith after high school are the ones that are passive and doing nothing with their faith when they're in high school. They get out, they're tested, and they fall away. Why? Because they never did anything. There was no buy-in. They heard a message, but they didn't participate. So if you want a plan to succeed, then you're going to have to involve other people and find ways to involve them. I've talked about this. I've marveled over this with my wife. She is a gifted administrator. I am not naturally gifted as an administrator. I tend to be the Lone Ranger type, but that's a destructive component to my personality that I have to keep in check, that I have to involve other people, because as a Christian, your success requires that you work together as a team. And my wife is really good about involving other people. And consequently, she has done a tremendous job with Club Genesis over and over again. She's seen it. She's built that thing up. She's rebuilt that thing in different capacities. But anything she builds is successful because she's so good at building a team that there's through synergy and energy and people working together, they're getting stuff done. Whereas my default response is I'll do it myself, which is good for me that I know how to do stuff and then I do things and then I can have initiative and but it's not gonna be good for growth. The best thing for growth is that you build a team and not just build yourself. So make others a part of your team, give them a job. Another verse that I think is excellent, Proverbs 14:28 says, Proverbs 14:28 says, in a multitude of people is a king's honor, but the lack of people is the downfall of a prince. What does that mean? That means the success and the honor of the king is reflected in all the people in his kingdom. And the lack of support that the king has is uh, 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 is suggestive of the downfall of someone. If they don't have a support base, then doesn't matter how pretty they are on the outside. A king without a kingdom is not much of a king. And so make other people a part of your team, give them a job, involve them, because you got to have an army of people around you in life that are doing the will of God right along your side, that will work with you, you work with them, and then everybody succeeds that way. So there's another illustration. There was years ago, there was a prophet that came and ministered at our church, and it was kind of almost embarrassing. Like, oh my goodness, he was the great prophet, and his message was basically a prophecy of greatness that he was of what God was going to do great through him, and that by association with his greatness as the great prophet, um, that's then we're great. We get to be great by association because we're connected to him. Well, that's great. So the great prophet is doing great things, and we're great because we're associated with the great prophet. That's great, but that's not going to build any followers. So why? Because apps that this whole message that he delivered is just kind of like shaking your head, like, what's the practical application to any of this? There was zero. So guess what? That's zero buy-in in the vision that he just cast. You can be great by being associated with my greatness. Well, that's not a vision that other people are going to get on board. So if you make yourself great with no consideration of the team, people aren't going to follow you except for your own cult of personality. Those are the people that are going to follow you. And it's important that what you're communicating is something that's bigger than yourself, that acknowledges a team of people around you. I thought this was profound. Well, I don't know. It was 2012 now. 2000 no. Okay, 2016. It was 2016, as recent as 2016. During the presidential election primary time period, when there's like 17 different Republican candidates trying to be the Republican nominee for president, which ultimately became Donald Trump. Well, there was one candidate who was extremely gifted, who is very capable. He had flaws that, as a Christian, was not where he needed to be. Even though he professes to be a Christian, he was not the kind of candidate that, as a Christian, that I would feel comfortable supporting, even though I like a lot of what he stood for. And I'm talking about Rand Paul. Rand Paul, when he was running for president, was one of the most gifted politicians, one of the most capable, one of the most well spoken. He had a few fatal issues, but um, he, when he was running for president, he had a lot of potential, but he just kind of fell flat as a campaign. People were not excited about him, and he'd have like this. In fact, I remember Donald Trump mocking him in a presidential debate because he was just like the little kid at the table who had barely any supporters. And I listened to Steve Dace explaining that, and I thought it, and I he posted on social media, and I wrote down what he said because I thought it was such a powerful observation that's true in life. He said this concerning him and why he didn't succeed in politics the way he should have or could have. Steve Day says, there is much more power in the word we than there is in the word I. The word we expands your base. The word I limits it. When you do this, use the word I as opposed to we, you build the juice, the energy, the camaraderie of your cult of personality, and then you alienate everybody else. And so the people who are already with you, no matter what, are really already with you no matter what. You have to have more discipline in your messaging. When you start playing the personality game, that's when you start losing people. What was he saying? Rand Paul will go on and he would be the martyr of all that he was doing, and nobody's helping him the way he needs to help. And then you talk about, I did this, I did that. And so all the people that already loved Rand Paul were like, yeah, he's our hero, he's great. But anybody that wasn't already a Rand Paul supporter was like, you think you're great, and the people around you think you're great, but it's a cult of personality. So you have to make sure that you're not building things around a cult of your own personality. Ironically, the earlier illustration, the guy who was an Obang who wanted to build a platform, his whole life was based on building himself as a cult of personality. And that's part of why a person can fail. And so the lesson in that is if you think team minded, you're going to have a lot more people excited to be on your team and join your team. If you don't think in terms of team and you just think I'm the visionary, come follow me, you're not going to build your base. You're not going to build your base. You're going to have a devoted fan base of people that are already all in, but you're not going to expand your base. And part of our success as Christians requires us to expand our outreach by being more team minded than just me centered. So part of your plan needs to be considerate of the team and not just you, the individual, as the tactical genius on the team, because you need to be focused on being a tactical genius of implementing what you're trying to do. But part of that is empowering other people around you to do things so that you can make sure that all the pieces are moving the way they're supposed to. Okay. So third point, another quote from Jocko. Jocko says, leaders must carefully prioritize the information to be presented in a simple, clear, and concise a format as possible so that participants do not experience information overload. This quote, probably the first time I read it, it made me laugh because I've just seen it so many times in my life. I'll say that one more time. Leaders must carefully prioritize the information to be presented in a simple, clear, and concise a format as possible so that participants do not experience information overload. So the reason that makes me laugh is there's so many times where in my own life, I didn't get things done because I was on information overload. And part of that's my personality because I'm really melancholy and pay attention to lots of details at the same time. But it's just so refreshing when you can communicate a plan clearly that it just makes everything work right. And so this is point number 3 is communicate your plan clearly. Don't assume people understand. Oh, they know how to do that. Don't assume that. We've made that mistake over the years too. how countless times in ministry of, oh, they know, oh, they know, or oh, they understand, oh, those people are fine. And if we don't ever investigate things and we just assume, we're going to get in trouble. I remember a former secretary that we had. I kind of got on her case for using the word assume. I said, remove that word from your vocabulary. I hate that word because every time someone said, well, I assumed such and such, I assumed so and so, you know why they're saying that? Because somebody dropped the ball. And so every time you say assume, what you did is what that means is you didn't communicate clearly and they didn't communicate clearly with you. So somebody dropped the ball and you never asked a question because you assumed. Okay. So communicate clearly. Part of communicating that clearly is don't assume. Don't assume. Don't assume people understand. Um, Clearly say, this is what hey, Joe, you're helping me with this. This is what I need you to do, Joe. This job. I need you to do this right here. I need you to be here at this time to do this job. We'll be done at this time. I really need you, Joe. Get it done, Joe. Please, Joe, get it done. Communicate it clearly. Don't assume people understand. Joe, I told you this is how you got to do this. And Joe, let me walk you through. This is what I need you. I need to stand at this door. I need you to take these flyers. I need you to give these flyers to this person. I see this form here, Joe. I need you to fill this form out with the people when they come on, Joe. It's having specifics and making sure. Do you understand, Joe? Are you sure you understand, Joe? Or if you're Joe in that scenario, I don't understand. Can you explain that again? And not be afraid to ask questions because everybody will be happier. Just everybody does a good job. Don't assume people understand when you're communicating a plan. Another mistake, don't, and this is what made me laugh on the information overload, is don't ramble on all the details. Don't ramble on and on. And this is something that I'm guilty of all the time. I get in trouble with my wife sometimes is I'll be telling her something and then I'll just start, I'll see in her eyes, she sees I'm getting too melancholy because I'm giving her all these details. Don't give people the details, give people the point. Get to the point of what you need to say with them. Don't ramble on. I so many times over the years, because I come from a very melancholy family, where I could sit in a room and get instructions from people that I'm related to that would take an hour of them talking. They're talking for an hour and they say so many things about so many things about so many things that I get out of that hour long meeting and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. No, just totally overloaded. And then at the same time, in some of these scenarios, like, well, I told you what to do. I told you what to do. Yeah, you told me, and you gave me a billion details, and I have no idea what in that billion details was relevant that I actually needed to do something with. So make sure that you follow my dad, Pastor Larry's prescription, short and powerful, because really, as you do that, as you communicate, that'll help you be clear. If you can't explain it in a sentence or two, you don't understand it well enough yourself. You need to make sure that you can communicate with people in as simple and straightforward and clear as possible, so that they can do their part well. It says in Ecclesiastes 5, verse 3, part B, and verse 7, it says, "A fool's voice is known by his many words." And in verse 7, it says, "For in the multitude of dreams and many words, there is also vanity, but fear God." So, too many words can be a problem. If you're like me, you're inclined to want to unveil everything, pause and say, okay, what do they need to know? Focus on that. Cut this other stuff. Focus on that. So make sure that in your plan and the people you're planning with, that when you're done, everybody goes away, they know exactly what it is they're supposed to be doing. I've seen a lot of planning meetings go south, and a lot of times it's because even though we should do this, there's no clear communication. This is what you need to do. 1, 2, 3. This is what I'm going to do. 1, 2, 3. And without that clarity in communication, a plan can fall apart. Oh, I thought so and so was going to do that. Or, it just helps to make sure that the plan is clearly communicated, short and powerful, simple, straight to the point. It also says in Proverbs 18, verse 2, a fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. Don't have a planning meeting that's just about you expressing your own heart. There's so many. I can think of teachers, I can think of times growing up, and it's like if we just focused on what it is that we're supposed to talk about, everybody's going to be better off for it. But I say that's a good verse if you're trying to do a plan or lead a plan and you're kind of on the sanguine side of the spectrum, and you want to gush and express your heart, talk about those things. Don't do that, because it's more important that you focus that people understand what's going on so the plan can be successfully implemented. Otherwise, what's the point of the plan? So skip the drama and lead up story and get to the point. There's lots of things we kind of hit on this. Sometimes problems, hindrances to communication is you're a little too melancholy. You're giving way too much details. You need to trim it back, keep it simple. Or you're a drama queen. You want to sensationalize everything that you say, and everything that you say becomes this great big story, and people are like, don't be a drama queen. That's going to hinder your communication because people are going to say, I don't know if this is real, or I don't know if you're just a really dramatic person. Or you could be a melancholy drama queen. You can be really dramatic and give too many details. Or you can be the sanguine rambler. You can be the sanguine that just likes to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I remember counseling a guy who was like that, and he wanted to say something, and about 10 seconds, he wanted counseling with something. About 10 seconds into what he said, I told him what he needed to do. Then he proceeded to talk for almost an hour. And at the end of that, I just repeated myself of what I said 10 seconds into it. And I just looked at him because he wanted to ramble and talk about it. But in other words, he cared more about that than he cared about hearing the counsel that he needed. So you want to make sure in your plan that you're all there with the common purpose to get wisdom to do a good job. That needs to be the thing. Okay, so that's the third point, is that communicate the plan clearly, keep it short and powerful, that kind of thing. Don't assume people understand, don't ramble on all the details. Okay, last point. Another quote from Jocko. He says, the best SEAL units after each combat operation conduct what we call a post-operational debrief. No matter how exhausted from an operation or how busy planning for the next mission, time is made for this debrief because lives and future mission success depends on it. I think this is one of the most powerful, important elements of a plan that's usually forgotten or neglected. And that's the debrief. In the debrief, you're talking about what went wrong, what went right, how can we adapt our tactics to make us even more effective? How can we increase our advantage over the enemy? That's what the debrief is about. It's use it immediately as a learning tool so you can be better the next time that you do something. That's what makes businesses successful. That's what makes Christians successful. It's the principle, point 4, examine yourselves. 2 Corinthians 13, verse 5. Examine yourselves as to whether you're in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you are disqualified? And in James 1, 23 through 25, it says, for if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. So in other words, it's talking about if you're a doer of the word, you're practicing it. It's like keeping that mirror in front of you, that you can see those things that need fixed, and you're working on them constantly. And so that's kind of the principle of examining yourself. If you're just doing something but never evaluating what it is that you're doing, you're going to waste a lot of time and the thing's going to derail on you. So examine yourself. And the other reason is Philippians 1, verse 9 through 10. It says, "In this I pray that your love may abound still more and more in knowledge and all discernment, that you may approve the things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ." It's about excellence. If you never seize that time to debrief, to examine yourself, you will not be an excellent person. If you never, if you never do that, if you always do that, if you get in the habit of always evaluating what you've just done, you will be an excellent person, and you'll continue to get better and better. My second daughter, Mallory, is someone who wants everything to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, she doesn't even want to try it. She doesn't even want to do it. Well, here's the thing. You don't get perfect at anything without practice. And if your practice doesn't contain a desire to do better, then even your practice isn't very good. So you have to be willing to maintain. And you'll see this with wannabe musicians. They'll want to walk up on the stage and play their instrument, and they're terrible, but they think they're awesome and don't need to practice. But the best musician, who probably is the least needs to practice least of anyone, is the one who always practices diligently. The same principle applies to the debrief. You're constantly maintaining, you're constantly improving, you're constantly working on those areas. You're constantly, okay, how can we do better? How can we do better? Because if you're content where you're at, then you sunk into complacency and you'll cease to do things well if you're not striving to do better. Ed Cole says it's easier to obtain than to maintain. It's always easier to achieve something than it is to maintain what's been achieved. And that maintaining part is where most people fall. And the debrief is part of what keeps you maintaining. In the past, one of the first things I had to do when I became a church administrator is I had to remove employees from positions where they could not learn. Because if we were going to go to the next level as a church in a certain area, we had to have an employee that could learn a new set of skills. Because the old school way of doing certain things wasn't cutting it with the way technology was going, with the way ministry was going, with the requirements and the laws and those types of things that were going on. You have to be willing to continue to learn and grow and improve, or at some point you cease to be useful to anybody. But if you're constantly debriefing, you're constantly perfecting, and you realize that you've never hit that standard where you don't need to do that anymore, you'll be a valuable person. You'll be a valuable team player. So if you aren't getting better, you're getting worse. Okay. You have to constantly evaluate, adapt, stretch, exercise, study. And if you don't do that, you lose it. Great example. You can see over and over again people that are ex-military, that when they're in the military, man, they were cut, they were ripped, they're in great shape. And you can see them walking around. They've got these great big blutos of beer guts and those types of things. What happened? Well, they obtained something, but they couldn't maintain it. And the discipline that they had in the military failed when they left the military, and then all that muscle turned to fat. Same thing can happen spiritually. So if you don't use it, if you don't use what God gave you, you lose it. If you don't continue to strive to do better with what God gave you, you will naturally do worse. So examine yourself. So again, recap: vision, it's the most important part. The commander's intent, what you're supposed to be doing. Buy-in. Make sure that the people on your team know what they're supposed to do and have a part. You're looking for ways to involve people. That's how you're expanding your impact. Communicate clearly. You don't ramble, keep it short. Don't assume anything that people understand. Make sure that people understand and communicate from both sides of that. That means if you don't understand, ask questions. And then fourthly, debrief. Continue to evaluate, how can I do better? And if you do those things, then you're going to have an effective plan. All right, let's close in prayer, and then we'll move on